Phoenix, Arizona. Oh, how times have changed over the past quarter century. With a population of 528,000, this desert community languished in relative obscurity in 1968. But a group of businessmen would soon put Phoenix on the NBA map by purchasing an NBA franchise and calling Phoenix its home. But first, Richard Block, who led this group of investors, had to convince then NBA Commissioner Walter Kennedy that this game would not go high and dry in the desert.
We had lunch, and I told him that we were interested in an expansion franchise in Phoenix, and he said that there was already one franchise in California. And I explained to him that we were talking Phoenix, Arizona. He had not heard of Arizona except casually, and certainly knew very little about Phoenix.
This new franchise would have a touch of Hollywood. Chipping in to the $2 million purchasing price of the team were entertainers Henry Mancini, Ed Ames, Tony Curtis, Bobby Gentry, and most significantly, singer Andy Williams. It was Williams who bought the biggest chunk, 28% of the yet-to-be-named team.
I'm like one of those entertainers that I think Buddy Hackett once said when they asked him why he got involved in some thing. He said, listen, my lawyers talk to me in baby talk, and if I can understand them, I say, okay.
The owners now needed someone to run the show. They turned to a 28-year-old executive for the Chicago Bulls, Jerry Colangelo. He was their #1 choice, but also the top choice of the NBA's other rookie franchise in Milwaukee. The race was on.
This was only 2 weeks after both cities were granted franchises. And I said, sure, I'd be happy to speak to Mr. Block. Well, about 5 minutes later, it was Dick Block on the phone.
I called Jerry, and he visited me in Beverly Hills, which is where I lived. I could see right away that he was knowledgeable, articulate, charismatic, and was determined to make a success.
I fudged a little bit, said that I needed time to think it through, but I do recall later in the afternoon, toward evening, calling my wife to say, just basically, pack your bags, it's Phoenix.
He was the best thing I think that happened to the team.
Colangelo went right to work. From Chicago, he brought with him head coach Johnny Kerr and trainer Joe Prosky. Kerr had been impressive with the young Bulls team, and Colangelo felt Johnny's personable nature would help sell the new team.
I can remember games when that have the state fair here, and it was all part of the entrance fee. You could come to the state fair and see a Phoenix Suns game, just sort of walk in, the doors would be, oh yeah, that's real nice, that's fun. Let's go over and watch the cows now. Or so. I mean, it's really changed NBA appearance in Phoenix.
The next line of business, get a name for this franchise. So they held a contest. Thousands of entries poured in, and what a selection. Among those failing to make the cut, the Phoenix Scorpions, the Rattlesnakes, the Javelinas, yes, and they even decided against the Phoenix Tarantulas. Instead, the team was named the Phoenix Suns. Now, all this club needed was some hired hands, players to actually take the court, enter the NBA expansion draft. And the Suns had obviously done their homework, selecting a player who would finish out his career in Phoenix. His name would become synonymous with the Phoenix Suns. Dick Van Arsdale was left unprotected by the New York Knickerbockers, and the Suns jumped at the chance to call this hard-nosed, fiery competitor their original player. Van Arsdale, for his part, wasn't that fired up in the beginning to join this new franchise in the desert.
When I came out here, it was very hot, and I wasn't really impressed by Phoenix when I first came here. But don't get the wrong impression. It didn't take me very long to learn to love Phoenix, and my wife also, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me in retrospect.
On October 18th, Van Arsdale netted the first 2 points for the franchise. The Suns went on to win their inaugural game, 116-107 over Seattle at the Coliseum. Their on-the-court success was short-lived. Like all new franchises, the Suns wound up struggling that first year, winning 16 and losing 66. For his part, Kerr was shorthanded. At times, he had just 9 players that first season, which made for interesting practice sessions.
In fact, he was the 10th man when we had practices. We only had 9 guys on the team, and and Johnny was my opposition during practice.
Foxy couldn't talk back, you know. I could sort of belt him around a little bit. I could tell him when he called a foul, but he couldn't say, hey, coach, you know, you're fouling me.
Guard Gail Goodrich, the Suns' second pick in the expansion draft, led the team in scoring at 24 points a game. Goodrich and Van Arsdale were named NBA All-Stars. Better days were ahead. So too was the super flip. The Suns' slow start put them in position for the top pick in the 1969 NBA draft. UCLA phenom Lou Alcindor could be theirs. A coin flip with Milwaukee would decide which team would land the 7-foot franchise center. Colangelo and Kerr were on the phone with Commissioner Kennedy in New York. The Suns let their fans make the call. 51% told the team to call heads.
I still maintain the coin came up the right way, because what really took place is that Walter Kennedy flipped the coin up in the air, it landed heads, and then he flipped it over on his wrist and called tails.
Devastated, the Suns had to regroup. And regroup they did. With the second pick, the Suns selected center Neil Walk out of Florida. They then traded for power forward Paul Silas. 1 month later, they zeroed in on landing a legend, Connie Hawkins. Losers in Super Flip 1, the Suns rebounded in Super Flip 2. It had come down to Seattle and Phoenix for the right to sign this high-flying artist they simply called the Hawk. Considered one of the greatest players ever to come off the playgrounds of New York, Connie Hawkins had been banned from the NBA for unsubstantiated gambling allegations. So he bounced around with the Globetrotters and the ABA. The NBA finally opened their doors, and the Hawk landed in Phoenix.
As I look back on it, I regard it as probably the most historic moment in the franchise, because it certainly turned around the fans in Phoenix.
Hawkins soon took to flight, displaying the swooping moves that earned him the label as the NBA's original flyer. A true showman, Connie even liked to bring others into the spotlight with him. Take, for instance, the story of Magic Fingers.
For me, it was a big day from the standpoint that it was the first time the Suns were ever on national TV. And I had a lot of buddies back in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and so like when Hawk went down, I mean, I was shook up.
Posse come running out, so he came running out. When I was out there, he asked me, was I okay?
And I say, you know, Hawk, you know, what's the problem? And he said,
Yeah, I'm fine. He said, you're not hurt? He said, no. I said, how's the crowd taking it?
And he just springs up, and Hot Rod Hundley goes,
he touched him, he did it again. He's going to stay in the game, the Hawk will play. Connie Hawkins, his Magic Fingers, Joe Prasky just touched him and cured him, you know. And
so then he realized that I just had him come out there and be on national TV, so we kind of had laughed about it and walked off the court.
Midway through their second season and 8 games under 500, Johnny Kerr was out as head coach. General manager Jerry Colangelo stepped in, going from the front office to the front lines.
Neil, be a little bit more patient now, okay? A little more patient.
The move paid off. The Suns made the playoffs in just their second year thanks to a Herculean effort by the Hawk. Phoenix needed a win in their final regular season game to nail down a spot in the postseason. Connie Hawkins came through with his best game as a Phoenix Sun, but give an assist to Paul Silas. With the Suns down by over 20 points at the half, Silas gave Connie a spirited pep talk in the locker room.
And he said, man, you're supposed to be some big superstar, and you're supposed to be great, you're supposed to be this, you're supposed to be that. He said, you're good enough, you can beat this team by yourself. Why don't you just go out there and do your thing, and we can win this game and make the playoffs. I don't know, I wound up scoring like 44 points and got 18 or 19 rebounds, and I think we won by 1 or 2 points.
The outlook was bleak for their opening round in the playoffs, as the Suns ran into those who would become legends of the game. Wilt, West, Elgin, and the LA Lakers machine. As expected, the Suns lost big in the opener. But here the story begins. Phoenix rattled off 3 straight victories over the Lakers to take a commanding 3-1 series lead. Upstart Phoenix was just a victory away from eliminating one of the great teams in NBA history.
We really did dominate them for the first 4 games. We lost that first ball game and then won 3 straight. And then Wilt decided he wanted to play.
Chamberlain took advantage of an injury to Suns starting center Jim Fox. Wilt's 30 points and 27 rebounds were just too much in Game 7, as the Lakers came back to win the series 4-3. But this second season marked the true arrival of professional basketball in Phoenix. After the playoffs, Jerry Colangelo returned to the front office and replaced himself as coach with Lowell Cotton Fitzsimmons. Cotton had no professional coaching experience. It was his energy, outgoing nature, and knowledge of the game coming out of Kansas State which won him the job.
You better get yourselves going, you better start playing, or I'll find me some rookies out here that want to play.
And I put in a system which was Tex Winter's triple post offense, and it worked. Neil Walk was a center who could catch the ball, pass the ball, could score inside, so it really worked for us.
For his part, Neil Walk never felt like the tail side of the coin, the player whom the Suns selected after losing the coin toss for Alcindor. Yet the shadow of that flip seemed to follow him through his days with the Suns. Armed with a sweet hook shot and an aggressive style into the bucket, Walk became a legitimate force in the NBA, averaging over 20 points and 12 rebounds in the 1972-73 season. His best game, a 42-point performance, came ironically against Alcindor and the Bucks. But the shadow would haunt Neil even in this hour of glory.
And I was talking on radio and the newspaper guys after the game. I went out for the bus. The bus left me.
The shadow reappeared one evening at the Coliseum, the night he was locked in the locker room.
So it was getting close to game time, like maybe 2 minutes to go, and I walked into the bathroom and ducked down, and I didn't see any feet, and I hollered, "Hey, big guy!" So there was no response.
And this one particular night, nature did ring its bell, and I was in there.
So I locked one set of double doors, another set of double doors.
So the radio was on, and I just laid on a training table and kicked back.
They're going, "Well, we don't know what's going on. Where's Neil? He started 482 consecutive games."
And not long after that, maybe as long as it would take a kid to run from the court to the locker room, I could hear the...
And I mean, he was livid, he was hot. When he come running out and his line was,
"Colangelo's gonna hear about this."
Under Cotton Fitzsimmons, the Suns put together 2 outstanding seasons, winning 48 and then 49 games. But frustration set in. Phoenix played in the tough Midwest Division with powerhouses Milwaukee and Chicago. The Suns failed to make the 1971 and 72 playoffs despite their sparkling records. Fitzsimmons resigned after the 1972 season. Colangelo would again take over as coach, but not before hiring and firing Butch Van Bredikoff in one of the most short-lived coaching stints in NBA history. Butch lasted all of 7 games before Colangelo had seen enough. Though their record dropped off, the Suns still put on a great show. The Hawk continued to dazzle the crowd, while the Suns added wiry guard and point-a-minute man Charlie Scott. Nicknamed the Tuna, Charlie loved to fill it up. Charlie led the Suns in scoring and was an all-star in each of his 3 seasons in Phoenix. The Suns also became a fun team to listen to, as Al McCoy took over the mic as the Suns' play-by-play announcer. He was to become the voice of the Suns, creating his own vocabulary with audience-compelling description.
Stolen by Hawkins. Over for Van. Back for the Hawk. To Van again. Can he hold?
McCoy's golden pipes would soon describe historic moments that lie ahead. The Phoenix Suns, no longer an expansion franchise, were ready to take a new direction, as a new era was on the horizon. Back in the front office, Jerry Colangelo began courting potential coaching prospects in the spring of 1973. 2 candidates emerged from the search: Dick Motta, the fiery coach of the Chicago Bulls, and John MacLeod, who in 6 seasons at the University of Oklahoma took the Sooners from the Big 8 basement to the penthouse. Colangelo asked MacLeod to come to Phoenix for an interview that would be unlike any other this 36-year-old coach had ever gone through.
He had me sitting close to the bench during a game that I saw, and then to
go into the locker room and critique the first half.
MacLeod must have passed the test. Jerry Colangelo went with his instincts and offered the job to the Sooners coach. MacLeod's was not the only new face at the Coliseum. The magical voice of public address announcer Stan Richards flowed through the madhouse on McDowell.
Here is the starting lineup for your Phoenix Suns.
Right away, MacLeod and Colangelo began assembling the new parts. Connie Hawkins helped mold Phoenix into a big-time NBA city. He was, however, an aging offensive weapon, and MacLeod was a defensive coach. So the Hawk was traded to the Lakers for 8-year pro Keith Erickson. That would set up a memorable showdown when the two teams next met.
Connie got the ball, and I was all out in his defensive position, and here comes Connie down with the ball, one-on-one, and he's doing the stuff that he did, you know, moving and going in all these different directions. And Connie made a fake one way, and I went for the fake, and kind of as I was coming back, he dribbled the ball between my legs and went around me and got the ball and went in and dunked.
MacLeod's inaugural season became a long one. The Suns' leading scorer, Charlie Scott, broke his arm against the Lakers in February of 1974, sidelining Scott and his 25 points per game for the season. Keith Erickson, however, won over the flock of Hawk fans and was named the Suns' most outstanding player. The Suns could manage only 30 wins in MacLeod's rookie season. But the hard work and long hours would pay off as Colangelo and MacLeod began to piece together the team that would soon play for the world title. The work began, as usual, with exhaustive draft research. The player who caught their eye was All-American John Shoemate, a stalwart 6'8", 240-pounder from Notre Dame. The power forward was drafted number 4 by the Suns. The luck of the Irish would not follow Shoemate to Phoenix, though. During training camp, Shoemate developed blood clots in his lungs and would have to sit out the entire season. So instead of playing time, Shoemate had to settle for some airtime.
I had to miss my rookie year, but not once did I feel alienated or left out. When they had any function that they had, I was always invited. As a matter of fact, I became Al McCoy's sidekick.
With Shoemate out, Colangelo engineered one of the biggest trades in Suns history. Center Neil Walk went to the New Orleans Jazz for Curtis Perry, Dennis Autry, Nate Hawthorne, and a future draft pick that turned out to be Ricky Sobers. The 25th annual NBA All-Star Game was played in Phoenix in February of 1975. A tremendous springboard for the franchise.
And that show opened for that NBA All-Star Game with a vista of the valley, coming over Camelback Mountain, the sun rising, the cactus, the buildings, and it was a great sell piece for the city.
It was certainly the season highlight for the Suns, who were ready to turn the corner. Just around the bend was one of the all-time brightest Suns moves. After the season, Phoenix sent Charlie Scott to Boston for a seldom-used guard named Paul Westphal.
I had mixed emotions. Boston was a championship caliber team, and I'd been sitting on the bench for my first 3 years in the league, but my playing time was increasing. And it looked like the next year was going to be the year I was really going to get to play and probably be a starter.
He would indeed be a starter, but for Phoenix instead of Boston. Some pieces of the puzzle were still missing, though. So Colangelo and MacLeod turned their attention to the draft and a kid from Oklahoma.
John MacLeod was my coach my freshman year in college. He recruited me out of high school. He was a big reason I went to the University of Oklahoma. After my freshman year, he came here to coach the Phoenix Suns. After my junior year in college, in talking with Coach MacLeod and Jerry Colangelo, the general manager of the Suns, they assured me that they would choose me with their first pick, which was the 4th pick in the NBA, to come and play in Phoenix. And I certainly didn't consider that a hardship to come play for a guy I knew in a city I thought I would like.
By NBA standards, Adams at 6'9" was an undersized center, but he could run like a deer. He could shoot, and boy, could he pass. Alvin was on his way to becoming the Suns' all-time assist leader and one of the most revered players in Suns history. Adams had also earned the respect of his peers that first season, being named to the All-Star Game. In late February, with Phoenix in the Pacific Division cellar, 2 key factors led to the rise of the Suns. First, John Shoemate was traded to Buffalo in exchange for Garfield Hurd, who without a doubt would be heard from later in the season. The second factor was the play of rookie guard Ricky Sobers. When Dick Van Arsdale broke his wrist against New Orleans late in the year, Sobers came into his own.
The Tons, I guess, had a reputation of kind of being nice guys and always finishing last. And I never liked losing, and I didn't go in there with the intention of creating any disturbances. Things just kind of happened that way, and I sort of got instant respect.
With the pieces falling into place, Phoenix exited last place, never looking back. Their first opponent in the playoffs was the Seattle Supersonics. Phoenix won Game 6 at home, 123-112, giving them the series 4-2. There was no time for celebrating, though, because next up, the defending NBA champion Golden State Warriors.
We could gradually see the Golden State players were starting to have a little, conflict. Rick Barry, very emotional player, high-strung, was becoming a little irritated at some of the things that were happening because we wouldn't go away.
Not only did Phoenix not go away, the Suns evened the series at 2 games apiece, winning a double overtime thriller in Game 4. An offensive explosion by their defensive specialist sealed the victory.
5. His 18-footer's good. He tied it. We go to overtime.
Just was one of those games. We went into overtime, and I remember the same feeling, just shooting that ball, and I could have thrown it from anywhere, and the ball was going to go in. That's just the way it happens sometimes.
The Warriors rebounded and took Game 5 in Oakland, sending the series back to Phoenix for yet another Coliseum nail-biter. The Oklahoma Kids' layup, with 12 seconds left, gave the Suns a 1-point lead. With time running out, Gar Hurd soundly rejects the Warriors' shot at a comeback.
Now with 3, now with 2, Wilkes from the corner, it's blocked by Hurd, and the Suns win it! The Suns win it! The Suns win the ball game! We go to Oakland for game number 7 on Sunday.
The Suns still weren't ready to set. Led once again by AA, Phoenix slammed the door in the fourth quarter, eliminating the defending world champions.
There was a point late in the game where we could see they just were like, there's nothing, we're not going to catch the Suns. The Suns are going to beat us. What's happening? How is this upstart team, this Cinderella team as we were called that year, going to do it?
They shocked the NBA world by winning Game 7 on Golden State's court, vaulting them into the finals against the tradition-rich Celtics. But first, there was an unforgettable hero's welcome at Sky Harbor Airport.
This kind of a showing is just unbelievable. We're all the happiest moment of my life.
People just couldn't move in the building. They had shut down the airport, and all the roads leading into the airport were jammed. And that was the welcome home party that took place for the Suns team, and it was another great memory.
The Cinderella Suns were on the brink of their first ever NBA title, giving Boston all they could handle. The Suns tied the championship series by capturing Game 4 in thrilling fashion, 109-107. Paul Westphal netted 28 and Alvin Adams 20. This dynamic duo continued to shine as they had all season.
I don't think I ever played with anybody in the NBA that I had that kind of rapport with, but just seemed like all I had to do was raise an eyebrow and he knew what I meant by it, or all he had to do was, wink or something, and I knew what he was thinking.
NBA history was about to be made as the series shifted back to the parquet for Game 5, tied at 2 games apiece. On the night of June 4th, 1976, the Boston Garden turned into a sweltering steam bath of frenzied fans donning green and white. With the odds stacked against them, the Cinderella Suns scratched and clawed their way back from a 22-point deficit to send the game into a first and then a second overtime. That's when miracles began to happen.
15 seconds to go. Phoenix down by 1. Here's a steal by Westphal to Van Arsdale to Perry. It won't go. Perry gets the rebound. Perry from the corner scores it. Curtis Perry scores it. 5 seconds to go.
He wrestled for the rebound and just calmly pulled up and shot a heck of a shot off the board in the basket, and we were off and running to the races. We felt we were going to win at that point in time.
4 seconds to go. Havlicek with 3. His shot with 2 is good. The Celtic fans are going bananas.
Celtic fans rushed the floor in anticipation of a championship, but their glee was premature. On his way to signal that time still remained, referee Richie Powers was roughed up by an unruly Garden fan. Amidst the bedlam, Paul Westfall's level head gave the Suns another prayer. Westy called a timeout when Phoenix had none. The Suns would have to concede a technical free throw by JoJo White, but they would get the ball at midcourt. Now, down by 2 points, Phoenix fired the shot, heard round the world.
1 second remaining in the second overtime. Here's Perry to Gar Hurd. Here's the jump shot. Good! It's good! It counts! Gar Hurd ties it. We'll go to the third overtime. I gotta take a breather. I want to tell you something. Somebody up there is on our side.
I've told the story many times that when Garfield hit the shot heard around the world, a fan next to me literally passed out on my lap.
The moon rock was incredible. That's what the team players kind of refer to it.
To have it go in was fate.
It was one of those shots that I enjoy shooting because when you make it, it really looked good.
The third overtime proved exciting, but not as fruitful for the Suns, who came up just short in the best game ever played in an NBA championship series. Drained of emotional and physical energy, the Suns dropped Game 6 in Phoenix, ending their Cinderella season.
I dream about it every so often. I think we would have won the championship had we won in Boston.
Fans must have thought their eyes were deceiving them at the start of the 76-77 season. For the first time in the history of the NBA, twins played on the same team. Dick and Tom Van Arsdale were united for the first time since they played together at Indiana University.
Tom and I had a great time being together and being able to travel together and spend a lot of time on the road.
Well, I knew it was my last year. It was my 12th year in the NBA, and I was just thrilled to be back in Phoenix. I met my wife in Phoenix, and she loved Phoenix, and so she was just as thrilled as I was to come back and play, and for me to play for the Suns.
Following the season, Dick Van Arsdale, the original Sun, the Flying Dutchman, called it quits after supplying Phoenix fans with a lifetime of memories. Taking a cue from his twin, brother Tom also retired, but not before Dick tried to engineer one final hurrah.
The last game we played in 1977, when Tom knew he was retiring, I tried to convince him to switch jerseys with me that night, and he wouldn't do it. And I wish he'd have done that.
Gone was the original Sun, but in place was the foundation for a team that would set the tone in the Western Conference for years to come. There was little doubt that rebuilding would be a top priority in 1977-78. One of the building blocks was fan favorite Ronnie Lee, a guard out of Oregon who delighted Suns fans with a reckless style that earned him the nickname the Kamikaze Kid.
He spent a great deal of time on the floor, so I think it was only natural that we came up with a contest that year called the Ronnie Lee Floor Score Contest. And the fans were asked to keep track of how many times Ronnie Lee hit the floor.
He was just had all kind of energy, never ate healthy food, and just had sugar all the time, and just go out there and just play so hard.
Walter Davis became the cornerstone of the Suns' rebuilding effort. It was draft day, 1977, when the Suns brass came to their sweet decision, selecting this smooth forward out of North Carolina. Davis went on to become one of the greatest Sun shooters of all time and earned the nickname the man with the velvet touch.
I think of all the teams that I knew in the NBA, I think Phoenix was the only team I really didn't know anybody on. And so I was a little afraid going that far away from home the first time. But once the basketball started with training camp, I quickly forgot about that.
Sweet D would prove to be the valedictorian of the Suns' best rookie class ever, with Alvin Scott, Bayard Forrest, and Mike Bratz all making the grade. This new Suns team clicked early, with Westfall and Davis lighting up the Suns' brand new $1 million scoreboard for a combined average of nearly 50 points a game. Both were named to the West All-Star squad, Davis as the only rookie. Thanks in part to his All-Star appearance, Walter Davis was named NBA Rookie of the Year after averaging over 24 points a game. The honor gave Phoenix 2 of the last 3 top NBA rookies, in Davis and Alvin Adams. The fans poured into the Coliseum to watch their sons. In fact, Phoenix set a new per-game attendance average of over 11,000, a huge crowd for that era. This was also the time the second jersey in Suns history rose to the Coliseum rafters. The original Suns number 5 joined the number 42 jersey of Connie Hawkins, Dick Van Arsdale, and the Hawk, now immortalized members of the Phoenix Suns. The following season, the Suns pulled off a blockbuster trade to get a banger they'd sought for 3 years, Leonard Truck Robinson. The sticker price for that truck? 1 kamikaze guard, Ronnie Lee, 1 forward, Marty Burns, 2 first-round picks, and cash. With a truck in the lineup, the Suns drove into the playoffs to meet the Seattle Supersonics in the Western Conference Finals. As it had all year long, the Suns bench came up big in the series. Mike Bratz provided a spark in the backcourt, and Joel Kramer stepped in for the injured Alvin Adams. Leading the series 3-2, the Suns returned home to Phoenix. Fans could taste a return trip to the championship series.
And with your versatility and teamwork ability, you'll be the greatest team in the NBA.
Phoenix could go back to the NBA Finals with a home court win on Mother's Day, the day Paul Westphal's mother was invited to sing the national anthem.
When the referees came by after she sang, you know, they said, "Oh, nice job, Mrs. Westphal." And she said, "Are those the blind guys?" And I just think maybe they held it against us. I always tell my mother that if she didn't sing the national anthem, we probably would have won that game. So we blame her for Phoenix not having a championship banner.
But Mrs. Westphal can't take all the blame. The Suns blew a late 8-point lead. Seattle took the 1-point win in that pivotal game and never looked back, going on to not only win the series against the Suns, but the 1979 NBA championship.
The Battle of the West is over.
It was an all-star cast that opened the 79-80 season for the Suns. Adams, Robinson, Davis, Boozy, and Westphal were the league's only starting lineup made up entirely of NBA All-Stars. The 1980 playoffs were significant more for what was happening during the timeouts than for what was taking place on the court. It was during those playoffs that an Eastern Onion singing messenger first appeared at a Suns game.
All of a sudden, I look over to my left, and I see this gorilla with a red cape walking onto the end of the court during a timeout, and he starts to do a little 2-step, time-step routine, and the fans over in that area just break out in applause. The gorilla started out as an Eastern Onion singing telegram and turned into a mascot for us that really is unparalleled in sports today.
There was no monkeying around in the offseason. The Suns engineered a controversial trade. All-star guard Paul Westphal was shipped to Seattle for the Secretary of Defense, Dennis Johnson. DJ admits the Suns sacrificed some scoring punch for defensive toughness.
I was getting my shot blocked a whole bunch of the time, so I never paid attention to my offense, which in turn turned me to a defense. Probably out of the jolt of embarrassment of always getting my block, you know, my shot blocked, I wanted to try and do stuff like that. I wanted to try and stop people.
All-star forward Walter Davis would become DJ's backcourt partner, leaving Phoenix with questions to answer. Could DJ play the point? Would Walter fit in at shooting guard? How would the new tandem mesh?
I still think we meshed together very well. A lot of people may doubt that, but I think we had a good time back there.
The experiment netted immediate results. Phoenix stood atop the Pacific Division for all but 2 days of the entire season. Despite his move to guard, Walter Davis was voted a starting forward by the fans for the 1980 All-Star Game. Dennis Johnson and Truck Robinson were also named to the team by a vote of Western Conference coaches. It seemed more like a Suns reunion at the All-Star game in Cleveland when you add John MacLeod and his assistant Al Bianchi as Western Conference coaches. The All-Star break didn't slow the rising Suns. Phoenix finished the year with a remarkable team record that still stands: 57 regular season wins. The Suns entered the playoffs with a full head of steam and a seemingly bright postseason future. That's when they ran head-on into former Suns coach Cotton Fitzsimmons and the Kansas City Kings, who handed the Suns a first-round exit from the playoffs. After the season, Phoenix inked Kentucky guard Kyle Macy. Joining Macy in the Suns rookie class was Clemson forward Larry Nance, the Suns' top draft pick, who says it didn't take him long to insert his size 15 foot directly into his mouth.
And I remember I said something like, I got a good chance this team because they didn't have no good forwards. And that's not exactly what I meant, but I was real worried about Truck hearing that and beating me up when I got to practice.
Phoenix was once again poised for greatness. Then, in the final preseason game, disaster struck. Davis, the Suns' most potent offensive weapon, went down with a broken elbow. The Davis injury thrust rookie Kyle Macy into the starting lineup at shooting guard. But still, there was something lacking. Phoenix needed a certain toughness. During the offseason, Truck Robinson was traded to the New York Knicks for power forward and NBA intimidator Maurice Lucas. Luke, the enforcer, would join Larry Nance, the eraser, in the Suns' front court. Nance began to emerge as one of the NBA's premier shot blockers, setting a franchise record with 217 swats for the season.
That definitely hurt another team, and it picks us up, and it get the crowd going.
Building blocks like Nance and Davis formed a firm foundation as Phoenix qualified for the playoffs for the 6th year in a row. But it was a foundation whose strength would be put to the test in the years ahead. Coming off yet another 50-plus win season, the Phoenix Suns could have just kept rolling right along. But that goal of an NBA championship was still tantamount. So Phoenix decided to roll the dice, trading all-star guard Dennis Johnson to the Boston Celtics for power forward Rick Roby. The rationale: beef up for the playoffs when added muscle is a must. But Roby was plagued by injuries his entire time in Phoenix. Suns fans would see just glimpses of the player Phoenix had actually traded for. One of the shining moments during the regular season came at the break. Suns forward Larry Nance was invited to take part in the NBA's first ever slam dunk contest, which took place appropriately in the mile-high city, Denver, Colorado. Nance wowed the crowd with an array of high-flying jams, which he had perfected back in Phoenix.
He may not give me all the credit for this. I taught him how to win his first slam dunk contest. Not the jumping part, I gave him the creations.
I remember me and DJ and Truck and Walt, a couple of guys used to stay around and we work on my dunks. And when I got there, I was pretty confident.
Yes, even the dunk king, Julius Erving, couldn't top Nance, who was crowned the NBA's first slam dunk champ. Phoenix ended up limping into the playoffs that year, saving their best for last. The Suns first met the Trailblazers in round 1 of the playoffs. The series went the full 5 games, the deciding contest in Portland. Former Blazer Maurice Lucas came up big against his ex-mates, and Walter Davis netted 29 as the Suns eliminated Portland.
John MacLeod and the Phoenix Suns come off the floor as victors here in Portland.
Up next, the Utah Jazz. This series hinged on a pivotal Game 4 in Phoenix. Down 3, the Suns looked to their ace to come through in a pinch.
Three-pointer. He got it!
As he did so many times for the Phoenix Suns, Davis hit the big last-second shot.
I've always been asked to take the last-second shot. And it's something that I love doing. And, two things are going to happen. You're going to miss it, you're going to make it, you're going to be a hero, or you're going to be a GOAT. And I try to be able to live with both of them.
Now it was time for Cool Hand Luke to take center stage for the clutch free throws. The Suns eke out a 111-110 overtime victory and wind up winning the series in 6. Phoenix had now reached the Western Conference Finals, where they met the LA Lakers' fine-tuned machine. The Suns came up short in the series, bowing 4-2. Still, quite a ride for a team that had few expectations entering the postseason. But here, the Suns' fortunes began to dim. The 1985-86 season got off to a dismal start. The Suns lost their first 9 games, but they did make NBA history, signing a 6'8" forward out of Bulgaria. Georgi Glushkov became the first Eastern Bloc player to suit up in the NBA. But the Suns, as pioneers, encountered numerous obstacles with the Bulgarian. First and foremost was the communication block.
It slowed the process down because Georgi didn't understand English very well, and certainly we didn't have any grasp of Bulgarian whatsoever.
The Suns never recovered from their 0-9 start and failed to make the playoffs for the first time in 9 seasons. But the biggest shocker came in December of '85, proving that the Suns were not immune to society's ills. Their all-time leading scorer and most popular player, Walter Davis, checked into a drug rehabilitation clinic. The following season, Davis was again in the forefront. This time, he was caught in the center of a grand jury investigation, which had handed down drug-related indictments against 5 current or former Suns players. But in the end, the allegations proved to be unsubstantiated. No drugs were confiscated. No players served jail time, but the scars remained.
Through that down period, in that specific period with the drug investigation that was really a black eye for not only the Suns franchise, but for this community, it could have led to the departure of this franchise.
The Suns would indeed prove to be a phoenix, but not before 2 other tragic events rocked the Suns franchise. In June of 1987, former Suns guard Johnny High was killed in a car accident. 2 months later, Northwest Airlines Flight 255 crashed on takeoff in Detroit. 7'2" center Nick Vanos of the Phoenix Suns was one of the victims.
When we think of Nick, we think of a tremendous individual that we lost and a friend that was lost. The basketball was secondary.
On the court, the Suns were ready to begin a new chapter. After 13 highly successful seasons, John MacLeod was replaced as head coach on an interim basis by the original Sun, Dick Van Arsdale. Meantime, Jerry Colangelo put destiny in his own hands, spearheading a group that would purchase the franchise. Now the team's president and CEO, Colangelo, picked on an old friend named Cotton to help him turn this franchise around. In came Fitzsimmons as the team's director of player personnel.
Together, Jerry and myself, we just jumped in, rolled up our sleeves, went to work, and totally changed the face of this team.
And change they did. The Suns did not renew Davis's contract. Edwards was shipped to Detroit. Jay Humphries traded to Milwaukee. The Suns left no stone unturned. In the biggest blockbuster of them all, Phoenix did indeed peddle their hottest commodity. All-star Larry Nance was off to Cleveland.
It really turned out to be the foundation for what we have today. We traded Larry Nance for Mark West, Tyrone Corbin, and a young kid named Kevin Johnson.
As soon as the trade happened, Cotton called me, and I didn't really know who he was. I remember seeing him with this perm when he used to coach in San Antonio, but I didn't know much about him. And his raspy voice, "Kevin, everything's gonna be all right. It'll be all right."
And how right he was. The Phoenix Suns were on the rise again. In charge of assembling the parts, Cotton was now ready to hop back into the driver's seat as the Suns' head coach. But more changes were in order, including a new gorilla. A competition was held to see who would become the new top banana. The Suns also held tryouts for their first ever dance team. Excitement was in the air. The Phoenix Suns were back. The first signal of a changing era was when the Oklahoma Kid's number 33 was officially hung to rest at the Coliseum. Alvin Adams retired, but riding into town with 3 rookies who were taken in arguably Phoenix's best draft ever. The leader of the pack, Olympian Dan Marley, was greeted with less than thunderous approval on draft day.
We are very happy to select Dan Marley. I cannot help how you feel. All I can tell you is this: we couldn't be happier, and I think you people will be sorry that you ever booed this young man.
I didn't know much about Phoenix, and they didn't know much about myself, so they were thinking about a big-name player, and when they drafted me, I understand them not being happy with getting somebody they know nothing about.
To balance out their newfound youth, the Suns shelled out big bucks and signed the NBA's first ever unrestricted free agent, veteran forward Tom Chambers.
They wanted me, obviously. They were willing to pay me good money to come here. I thought the team had a great chance, even though they hadn't had good seasons the last couple years. I thought we had a great chance of becoming a very good team.
Pulling out a page of history, Fitzsimmons named as his top assistant former Suns great Paul Westphal, who was dubbed head coach in waiting in one of the most unique arrangements in all of sports. It took no time at all for the new staff and players to blend into the new and explosive Suns machine. Phoenix won 27 more games than the previous year. Some teams take years to rebuild. Phoenix took 1 summer. The time was also right for honoring past heroes. Paul Westphal pumped 5 years of sweat and soul into the Suns. The club honored number 44 by retiring his jersey. So while stars from the past were immortalized, stars from the present were making names for themselves. In the first round of the playoffs, the young gun Suns mowed down an undermanned Denver team 3 games to zip. Phoenix then rode right over the Warriors. But all good things must come to an end, which they abruptly did for the Suns. Phoenix lost 4 straight to the eventual NBA champion Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. The young Suns were schooled the hard way, but they took copious notes for their next playoff test against their arch rivals. The Suns' achievements did not go unnoticed. Awards were handed out left and right by the league. For the 3rd time, Jerry Colangelo was named Executive of the Year. Cotton Fitzsimmons captured the award for Coach of the Year. On the floor, KJ was named the NBA's Most Improved Player, while EJ, Eddie Johnson, garnered the award for the Best Sixth Man. The Suns continued to open up holes in the opponent's defense in the 89-90 season. Never was that more evident than on one historic March evening. Tom Chambers set a franchise record by scoring 60 points against his old team, Seattle. The Suns burned their way right into the playoffs. The Jazz proved to be anything but a tune-up in round 1. With the series hanging in the balance, EJ cashes in on the bank. Then with the game tied, time running out, it's KJ's turn. Phoenix survived the best-of-5 series by winning Game 5 in Utah, 104-102. The Lakers were next, and the Suns proved they learned their lesson. The Suns flashed a newfound playoff confidence, eliminating the Lakers in 5 swift games. The clincher coming at the Forum, no less.
The Suns have won! The Suns have won!
These guys have shocked the nation tonight. And this guy right here, talk about role models, special athletes. He's something else.
Just as they had done 14 years earlier, after the Golden State series in '76, Suns fans swarmed Sky Harbor Airport. An estimated crowd of over 9,000 fans roared their approval as the Suns finally downed their longtime nemesis. The playoff road ended as the upstart Trailblazers beat the Suns 4-2. While dreams of a title vanished, Jerry Colangelo's dream of a downtown palace was beginning to materialize. The previous season ended in the Northwest, and the new season began in the Far East. The Suns opened the season on the road and across the Pacific, splitting an historic 2-game series with the Utah Jazz in Tokyo, Japan. While reaching new levels on the court, the Suns never lost sight of their #1 commitment, the community. A Suns focal point throughout their 25-year history in the Valley. Helping to drive that point home, Colangelo retained the services of 2 former players. Confined to a wheelchair after spinal surgery in 1987, Neil Walk joined the Suns community relations team the following year. He has since been teamed up with his old teammate, Connie Hawkins. Expectations were again bright at the beginning of the 91-92 season. The Suns' crowning achievement came at the expense of the Sacramento Kings. The franchise picked up its 1,000th victory. Meantime, the 42nd NBA All-Star Game in Orlando had a definite Suns flavor to it. Jeff Hornacek and Dan Marley were both selected to play for the West squad. All-Star Weekend in Orlando was magical for another reason. Call it a shot in the dark, but Cedric Ceballos became the Phoenix Suns' second NBA Slam Dunk champ, thanks to his Hocus Pocus jam. While Ced was soaring to new heights, the Hawk was landing in the NBA Hall of Fame.
There was no way to describe the feeling of fulfillment that this honor gives me. I will try to live up to the high ideals that it represents.
Heading into the playoffs against San Antonio, the Suns announced that their coach-in-waiting plan had come to fruition.
Let me call up the new head coach of the Phoenix Suns, Paul Westphal. Paul?
The news may have been a motivator for the Suns, who went on to sweep the Spurs 3-0. That set the stage for a second-round showdown with Portland, a series earmarked by an ear-piercing Game 4 at the Coliseum. They didn't know it then, but the screaming spectators were giving the Coliseum an unforgettable farewell. It was a spectacular 153-151 double overtime thriller. However, the Suns would come up 1 bucket short. Portland went on to win the series in 5 games, ending the Suns' season and the team's storied history at the Coliseum. The madhouse on McDowell has been replaced by the power of the Purple Palace. Suns fans are now rocking in the beautiful new America West Arena. The Suns have also burst onto the scene with a new look logo and matching uniforms. The changes would not stop there. New coach Paul Westphal began the Suns' 25th year with a new cast of characters on the court, led by Sir Charles Barkley. In their biggest trade ever, the Suns gave up 3/5 of their starting lineup. All-star guard Jeff Hornacek, forward Tim Perry, and center Andrew Lang were traded to Philadelphia. In return, the Suns got an Olympic gold medalist and one of the best players in the game. The trade puts some bite in the Suns' bark and gives them a legitimate chance at an NBA championship.
I try to win a lot of games by physical intimidation, and it works most of the time because I've been very successful in my 8 years.
And Sir Charles would not be the only new face in the Suns lineup. He was soon joined by a hired gun in free agent guard Danny Ainge. The intense NBA veteran rode into Phoenix with a pair of championship rings already on his fingers. But there's room for more. To round out the roster and provide additional bulk in the middle, Phoenix went for a big O.
The Phoenix Suns select Oliver Miller from the University of Arkansas.
The Suns couldn't wait to prove the 300-pound pick would tip the Western Conference scales in their direction. Bold moves have been made. The pieces are now in place for a run at the NBA championship. The Suns will not settle for second best.
The fans are crazy. Phoenix Suns are amazing. They're hot. So feel the heat.
Over the past quarter century, the Phoenix Suns have become more than just a basketball team, reaching out to provide relief from the pain and heartache in our community. We live in a diverse society, which at times seems to be pulling us apart. Well, the Suns have pulled us all together. We especially saw it in 1976, and again in 1990, as people from all walks of life became one. But maybe most of all, what the Phoenix Suns have done is to bring out the kid in all of us.